I'm Shelly Sanders, a former journalist for the Toronto Star, Maclean's, Canadian Living, the National Post, and Reader's Digest. When I discovered my Russian Jewish roots, I began writing historical fiction inspired by the strong women who came before me, the trauma passed down for generations, from exile to Siberia, pogroms, and secrets kept upon arrival in Canada. The Night Sparrow is my fifth novel and, like Daughters of the Occupation, a Canadian bestseller. Here's a brief synopsis. Moscow, 1942. Elena Bruskina joins the Red Army as a sniper to get revenge from the fascists who murdered her family. But when she's ordered to give up her rifle to become an interpreter, she's entangled in a secret hunt for the most evil Nazi of all. The Night Sparrow is inspired by 2,500 young female snipers who had a combined tally of 11,000 kills. Only 500 survived. At the end of the war, their achievements were concealed and the women were told to go back to their most important duty, motherhood. This year marks the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, and in these precarious times, I'm inspired by the first women in combat who risked everything to defeat fascism. I want to fill the erased pages of history with the womanly account of war, to know what's possible. The Night Sparrow. Let's get ourselves into gear, stand up to the Nazis, and drive them back. Yulia Zhukova, Red Army Sniper. Chapter 1, Silo Heights, Germany, April 1945. Elena Bruskina lay on her stomach, finger poised on the trigger of her rifle, though she couldn't see her own hand in the chilly darkness. It was almost 5 o'clock in the morning, and she was entrenched in the front line with the rest of her sniper's platoon, ready to attack the German Wehrmacht troops. But when more than 100 Red Army anti-aircraft searchlights suddenly beamed overhead, turning night into day, her fingers clenched the stock of her rifle in alarm. The shafts of light were supposed to temporarily blind the enemy's frontline soldiers and draw attention to their positions. Instead, the eclipsing glare boomeranged off the thick plumes of artillery smoke and dust, silhouetting Elena and her first Belarusian front comrades in sharp, bright lines. Instead of stealthy hunters, we're well-lit targets, she thought, incensed. Then, adding insult to injury, she couldn't see anything but spots. While the enemy's eyesight was enhanced, the Red Army's vision was inferior because of its own searchlights. She blinked twice to make her eyes water and felt the ground-shaking howl of Katyushas, multiple rocket launchers bombarding the enemy's front, and mortar bombs detonating with hazy blurs that amassed over the trails of white smoke left by the Katyushas, and Red Army ground attack Sturmovik planes squealing overhead with air gunners opening fire at the German front line. They flew at such a low altitude, Elena's hair whooshed from the draft. She covered her ears with the collars of her greatcoat to blot out the deafening noise. It sounded like a multitude of thunderstorms, like the world was on fire. She opened her mouth to equalize the pressure on her eardrums, gaped at the flock of birds emerging through the artillery storm, fluttering madly in all directions. Then, German anti-aircraft rounds began striking with a relentless force, decreasing the already limited visibility. Elena quivered at her stricken comrades' piercing cries. "Advance!" Lieutenant General Perkiev shouted. His usually crisp voice was barely audible, as if he was speaking through a tunnel. Elena rose slightly to a crawl position. Her hands and knees sank into the swampy ground. "Shava, where are you?" she yelled to her shooting partner, to be heard over the bullets and bombs. She felt a tap on her shoulder, turned and saw Shava's dirt-stained face. "Right behind you," Shava shouted. They exchanged knowing looks before venturing into the smoky abyss. The boggy smell of mud drenched her nose, and the uneven, marshy land was hard to traverse, with patches of sludge, dirty snow, and wet brown grass. In the distance, Elena heard Soviet tanks grinding through the mud. This was bad. They were supposed to be closer, the tanks and anti-tank guns, to support the infantry's offensive. "It's Kustrin all over again," Elena panicked, recalling their most recent interminable conflict. "We're going to be here for months. We may never get past Silo Heights. I may never see Berlin." She rubbed her inflamed eyes across the sleeve of her jacket.